everyone. I'm Pat Soldano, president of Family Enterprise USA. We promote generationally owned family business and their lifetime of savings in Washington, D.C., all sizes of business and all industries, all levels of business. I'm very pleased to have with me today Ken Monroe, who is the president of Holt of California. This organization has been in business more than 90 years, and Ken is kind enough to join us today and talk to us a little bit about his business. So with that, I'm going to ask him to start by telling us a little bit about the business, the history of the business, and himself.
Sure. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me on too. Nice to be here. I'll try to keep it short. So we're a Caterpillar dealer and have been a Caterpillar dealer since 1931, which means we have a territory that we cover here in Central California. That's our kind of flagship business is the cat line. We're also a little unique in that there's actually three families that are the owners of this family business. And that came about 24 years ago when we merged two relatively small dealers merged here in Central California and became Holt of California. So we operate as a family business. We treat each other as a family business, but we're not always at Thanksgiving together as a family because of the three families that are operating the business. So it's a little bit of a disjointed history in that my plan for successor is a fourth generation in the business. His great grandfather started in 31. My dad was an employee and had an opportunity to buy in. So I'm only second generation. So my successor is fourth generation. I'm only second generation. And so we have a little bit of I don't have an elevator speech down for how we've been organized, but we do have a unique history in that Benjamin Holt, where our namesakes come from, actually invented the Caterpillar tractor in Stockton, California, where we're part of where our operation is. And he had two grandnephews who started a dealership, and that's where our Holt name comes from. And we still have a part of that Holt family as one of the owning dealers. So we proudly wear the Holt name because he's the guy who started the whole Caterpillar tractor back in 1904. And it was called Holt Manufacturing at the time, then it became Caterpillar, and said we're a dealer for them. So probably enough about our history. It's one of those long and winding ones.
Well, it's very fascinating history. The fact that you're fourth generation and you kind of skip third generation, and fascinating that there's three families involved. It's hard enough to just manage a business with one family. So with three families, congratulations to you. And here you are, 92 years old. That's incredible. So it's a fascinating history. And so I'd like to talk as much as you'd like to talk about the family, but I'd also like to talk about the employees, because we are learning more and more how important workforce issues are with family businesses. And certainly the pandemic pointed that out to us. But we've also learned that family businesses treat their employees many times like their families. And so they, in fact, have generations of employees working in the business, which is pretty incredible to us. In our last survey that we did last year, which is a little dated now, we found that 75% of businesses have generations of employees working in the business. So I'd like to know, first of all, do you have generations of employees working in the business, and are there any stories you'd want to share with us about that?
We do. We have more than I even know. I stumble into, you're his sister, you're his mom. I'd never put the two together. More often than I'd really like to admit, because of how many people there are related. So I give you one example. Our vice president of our ag division started here at 18, right out of high school. His dad was a mechanic here, and really one of the top guys in rebuilding engines. His mom was our receptionist. His brother worked here for a while. So his dad retired from here. His mom did. His brother left after a while, and he's a vice president. So he's probably the more unique one. But we have, I've never counted it up, but we have numerous family members that work with us. And I will tell you, historically, um, when we were two separate dealers before we merged these, the Holt side, that dealership had a no relatives um, policy because they'd had a bad experience once where dad had hired son and son wasn't making the cut and they had to deal with it. So they went to that, which, in a family business seems a little funny to do because you're bringing in family. When we merged, we said, look, we need good, solid employees. If you're family, and we'll deal with a family member that's not cutting their weight. We'll have to deal with that, and we'll help you do that. Don't take it personal, but that's what we'll have to do with it. So we've definitely encouraged it. One of the ways we've really kind of got a lot of employees recently, and a lot of them have been family members. Instead of recruiting people and giving them $1,000 or $5,000 bonus, the person who recruits somebody, we'll give them a week vacation. So if they bring somebody on board day one, they get a week vacation. And over the last, I think, year and a half, last number I heard, we'd gotten about over 120 people that way. And I'm sure you talk to a lot of family businesses. We're all struggling to hire good, solid employees, and so we think that's one of those things that a family business can do. We give people vacation; that's what they want. We bring in family members from employees, and it's been a very successful run so far that way.
Well, that's a great idea. A week's vacation is pretty awesome for bringing on employees. And, you made a really good point about non-family businesses probably see that as a negative, right? As a complication to business, where family businesses understand how important family is. And so they embrace bringing on relatives. And not only do you embrace it, you actually reward them with a week's vacation. That's
Yeah, well,
incredible.
and we also understand if it goes south that it's not a fun conversation, but you have to do it, and we're there to help them. We're there to help people through the ugly situations where people just want to avoid those. So, but for the most part, it's worked out very well.
Well, you mentioned a little bit, hiring individuals being a struggle, certainly through the pandemic. When you talk about, workforce issues today, what do you think are some of the big issues that you're facing as an organization?
For us, our probably number one biggest issue. So we repair all this equipment we sell also. So we have journeyman technicians that work for us, and finding qualified journeyman technicians is damn near impossible. And it started probably 40, 50 years ago in California anyway. I'm not sure about the rest of the country when shop class, as we all knew it, started to go away. And the drive was you need to go to a 4-year college and forget working with your hands and all that type of thing. And so those guys who started at 18 years old right out of high school usually had 2 years of shop. They like working on things. They like to fix things. That went away, and they didn't have that opportunity. So our number one biggest challenge to growth, to taking care of our customers, is finding enough technicians. And we've got a multitude of programs and things going to try to get more technicians, but it's a systemic type thing. It's not something we as one company can solve, but we're trying to do the best we can to solve it for us. So that is our number one issue in terms of limiting growth, limiting taking care of our customers, all those things is having that good, solid base of technicians.
Well, as you know, we work in Washington, D.C. at a national level, speaking with members of Congress, telling them what the challenges are for family businesses. And so this is obviously a very serious challenge. You're not the first person to talk about it. Do you have any advice for them? I mean, in legislative, it sounds like in some ways, certainly education, eliminating shop from high schools has been a serious problem. Is there something our government or Congress can do to help you?
I think there are, and some of it is going to be state, probably more state driven, but certainly things like tax credits for us bringing instructors on staff, tax credits for taking a kid who really can't get it. So we have some tests we can see if they're mechanically inclined. If they're mechanically inclined, we think they got a pretty good work ethic. We'll help train them along, but that's an expensive thing. So even tax credits, something along those lines would give us the benefit to go hire instructors, curriculum to get teachers trained in to be technicians, or technicians who are good technicians but can't teach. Teaching them how to be teachers would be a great thing. But at a federal level, one of the things that's most frustrating is the immigration issues we have. I mean, I think there are probably some awesome technicians out there that we could go hire, and we'd help them learn English. They'd probably help us learn other languages, which wouldn't hurt. But it's a nightmare to try to hire somebody who's immigrating in legally or illegally. We have gone down the path a couple times to try to bring somebody in who's gone through all the right processes. It's a nightmare. I mean, it is not an easy thing. We even had an opportunity with a fellow Caterpillar dealer down in South America, and we approached him saying, if you ever lay anybody off, if you're having a slow time, maybe you could move your guys to us. And they said, forget that. We'll send you our best guys. They could learn English. They could do, it would be great. And so we started looking into what it would take to bring in a guest worker. And after about 10 pages of notes and 2 hours of sitting with an immigration attorney who works for Caterpillar, who is an international company and has to do this, we just threw up our hands and said, there's no way we can manage a business like that. So things like that at a federal level, if we could really get some immigration, and I don't know if you call it reform or just streamlining or whatever, but there's got to be a really lot of good hands that would be coming in that we could put to work, and we'd help train and could fill some of these needs.
That's such a great point, and you're not the first person to mention that. So, people think of immigration policy as a different issue. It's a border policy. In your case, it's a work policy. I mean, it's a workforce issue. And again, you're not the first person to mention that. So that's very helpful for us. We will definitely highlight that with members of Congress. And we may even feature it at one of our Congressional Family Business Caucuses that we help Congress to facilitate at least 3 to 4 times a year. So thank you for bringing that up. And we may call upon you actually to further expand on that and maybe talk to members of Congress about it.
I am absolutely happy to help however I can in that regard. It is a very frustrating piece where you think you've got good talent out there and you can't get to them. So happy to help.
Are there other regulation or legislation issues that you deal with on a daily basis that help or hurt your business?
Okay, we're in California, so was that a smart aleck question? Yeah, there are. We and I'm not aware of many that really help us, to be honest with you about that, and I'm sure there are, but the biggest one we face here in California, which I believe is unique to California, is this Private Attorney General's Act, the PAGA, where a private attorney can, take anybody's case and turn it into a class action suit, in essence. It's one you almost have to budget for, and it's one that's the frustrating part about it. When we talk about employees, we talk about trying to treat our employees like family or like adults. There are so many regulations in California that if you try to be flexible with people and someone wants to take you to court on it, you're really out. So we had one of these happen a few years ago, and the response was to all of our employees, sorry, you can't take your lunch when you want to take your lunch. You can't take it. So we have guys who come to work at 4 a.m. to go work on equipment, and they're not ready to have lunch in their 5-hour, they're adults. But all it takes is one of them to say that they didn't give me my lunch in time, or I didn't get my overtime for that, and you're now in a suit. So we had to clamp down, and the ability to treat someone as an adult and be flexible with them is pretty much gone in California. You can't do it and then run the risk of what you do with it. So it's it's driven a little bit of a wedge in my mind between us and our employees because they don't want that either. But you don't have a choice. Then you have the money aspect of it, which is truly they stack all of these things up and call it as big as they can. They can have right to go look at all your records, ask for millions of dollars, and then you get into a negotiation. And then you're just trying to minimize the amount of money you pay out, but it's a definite cost that you have to build into your structure today. And if you're trying to spend that money on training, you can't spend that money on training. That's probably the biggest one that we find is a real challenge for us. In our industry, California Air Resources Board CARB regulates a lot of the diesel engines that we operate. And so trying to work through how that works for our customers and for us is a real challenge. And so, yeah, regulations do impact us a lot. And we don't have enough time for me to go through all of this. So we'll leave it with those couple.
Well, it's interesting. I thought you might mention the PAGA here in the state of California, and I'll give you a great example as well. I was in a retail store the other day and standing in the checkout line, and there was one cash register, one person at the cash register, and the woman over the loudspeaker, his manager said, "You need to go to lunch now." And he said, I'm the only person here. She said, "I don't care. You need to go to lunch now." And so he had to leave the cash register with all these people standing in line, no one available to help him.
Yep.
It's absolute craziness. We're all
It
looking around at each other like, and he's like, "I can't help it. It's not my fault."
It's not, and that's the frustrating part about it. You have most employees are in our are aghast at something like that. They just, but you say, sorry, that's the rules here, so you got to follow them. And that's a great story. That's what happens.
Well, so and we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about charitable giving, because we know that family businesses are always very charitable. Typically, we've learned that a very large percent of their giving of not only money, but time and services is in their local communities. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how Holt of California does charitable giving.
Yeah, it pretty much is all in our local communities. I mean, that is where our focus is. But we're not really good at it. And I say that, I don't feel like we're as organized as we should be with it. So we focus on probably a broader, somebody walks in the door and they've got a good story and they've asked, we'll probably help them out. We haven't got a really good, here's what we think is important and here's how we should do it. And we even got we're in the middle of a new little internal marketing. So we're doing podcasts now for employees. And we were in one the other day, and one of the questions was, would you consider donating money to employees causes, like Little League? And we're all for doing that, but then we got 2 states we cover, and we got 900 employees, and so the answer was, well, we'll look at it, but I'm not sure how we could manage all of that. So we do it very locally. This is a really long and winding answer that doesn't get you much. That we need to do a better job of being more directive of how we're going to do that and who we're going to do for. But pretty much everything we do is local. I mean, we live in the communities. Our people live in the communities. So when we give stuff, it's really for giving back into all the communities we serve.
That's like most family businesses. So you mentioned, I didn't hear you, or you broke up a little bit, the number of employees you have, and I think you said you cover 2 states. So how many employees do you?
We're about 900 employees. We're okay. Central California, Northern California, and then Oregon is where we have. This is where it gets complicated again. That's not all the Caterpillar business. We represent a company called AGCO, Kloss, and a company called MLA, which sells forklifts. So some of those lines are a bigger area than we do for our Caterpillar Inc. territory.
Okay. I'm also now going to switch gears, and you may not be prepared to answer this question. So if you don't want to, that's fine. But as you know, the estate tax is a tax that affects family businesses. It affects individuals. It doesn't affect corporations. Corporations don't pay an estate tax. Only individuals pay an estate tax. What are your thoughts around the estate tax? Have you, of a family, done planning? Has it affected the business in any way? Could it affect the business in next generations?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very frustrating experience. This is very simplistic. It'll never happen. But we spend an incredible amount of money on accountants and on attorneys to get to an end result that if we could simplify this and just pay what we would all consider a reasonable tax that is just there and not spend all that money on attorneys and accountants to do something that helps perpetuate what we think is a good thing for our communities, I think we'd all be better off on it. So we have done a lot of work on that. We've done a lot of gifting and trusts. We're in the process of me now moving up to the chairman level and bringing in my successor at running the day-to-day operations. And it's a very it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. It takes your eye off, take care of your customers, take care of your employees. In my opinion, you spend money on resources that you shouldn't have to spend money on. And it's not to take anything away from really good attorneys and really good accountants, but gosh, why do we need these folks for winding our way through all the laws that I'm not sure what is accomplished out of all those. So we'll get there. I know when I talk to other family businesses about it and try to say, wouldn't it be better to simplify it? And they kind of look at it like, well, I got a good accountant, I got a good attorney, so I'm done. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. That's not the solution. The solution is we need to get these laws working in our favor. So yeah, we're on an equal playing field with a publicly held company or somebody else who's just trying to grow their business. So yeah, I have given a lot of thought to it, and it's a very frustrating experience.
Yeah, exactly. It does spend a lot of time and money, and as you pointed out, taking your attention off the business, which is so important for the family. And sometimes you can plan for it, and sometimes you can. If you have an unexpected death early in life, you don't necessarily have a chance to plan, and you end up paying a horrendous tax.
You do, and Pat, the other thing that is really frustrating about it all, and I can't believe that most of the average people without a law degree or an accounting degree even understand what you end up with. I mean, we have all these documents that say they do this and say they do that, and 10 years down the road when something happens and you go back to that document and say, well, here's what's supposed to happen. Well, sometimes it's not written that way, and it's complex. I mean, even the people who write them, I'm not sure they all fully understand what they're writing. So you're left with, man, I have to trust everybody to understand the spirit of how this happened. And if somebody gets into it and is a little upset and wants to read it a different way, really challenging to deal with that. So even those of us who've done all this stuff, I could say I really fully don't understand every aspect of all the things that I have sent up and how that truly works legally and for accounting. That's pretty frustrating when you want to be able to really understand things.
Well, and as you said, it puts you in these structures and vehicles you don't understand that take a lot of money and time and effort and expertise to administer year after year after year, generation after generation. And you wonder, why are we doing all this? And as I mentioned earlier, there is planning to be done, but we have an example of a family here in Southern California. It's a friend of mine. Her family passed, and her father passed, her mother passed, and they owed $10 million in life insurance. Well, they owed $10 million in estate tax. They had a life insurance policy that was fortunate enough to pay that. Then her brother and her managed the business together. It's a manufacturing business. They have about 380 employees. And unexpectedly, her brother at the young age of 65 had a massive heart attack, and he died, and he had no plan. And so they owe $60 million in estate tax. They are trying to plan, but they're not sure they can plan their way out of it this time. And the business will not survive another generation of tax.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, because sometimes you can't plan it away. And we remind people as well.
Yeah. Any help you could do in DC about that would be wonderful.
We'll try.
Okay.
Um, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. Like to know if you have any final comments you'd like to make or advice you'd like to give.
Yeah, and Pat, you appreciate this. You know, I'm the chairman of the Family Business Association of California. We were maybe 10 years old and set up to represent family businesses because there was none. Same thing you did on a federal level. And I think the thing that, and I know you struggle with this probably like we do, getting family businesses to step up and say, hey, you ought to join this. You don't have to come out. You don't have to go meet the politician, but if you would join your name and having some dues helping us get the right people to go make a difference for family businesses would really go a long ways. And I just sometimes our family businesses, they kind of want to put their head in the sand a little bit and just go take care of business. And we were that way for a long time too, and figured out we better get at the table, otherwise it's going to be a challenge. So that's what I'd leave with is if you're watching this and you're not a member, join up the Family Enterprise USA, or if you're in California, come see us about the FBA. We'd love to have you and go battle for family business.
Well, thank you for that. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. You can't keep your head in the sand. There's a lot of legislation coming down the pike that could really impact family businesses. I get that they want to stay private, to your point, but they've got to stand up. Otherwise, they're going to be hurt. And now they have organizations like FBA and FEUSA that can do that for them and have the experts, as you say. So I really appreciate that. We, of course, support FBA. We think it's a wonderful organization, and Bob does a tremendous job. So thank you for working with that organization as well. Thank you for supporting us.
Sure.
And thank you for doing this video today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It's been fun.